Religious suffering is at one and the same time the expression of real suffering and a protest against real suffering. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. Solidarity and shalom, y'all. Um, Today, we're going to be talking about the faith of the Toilers, aka the religious beliefs of the masses, the working class masses, and the peasant masses, the toiling masses, and why anti theism and anti religion is not only anti working class, anti peasant, anti global south, but it's also anti communist. Religion has many forms. And one of the basics of Marxism is that the base defines the evolution of religion. The base being the base class structure of society, the base economic structure. But I will take that step further with more nuance and go a little bit into more of what Gramsci talked about and argue that faith and religion truly takes on the class character of the powers that use it. So, for example, Catholicism in Latin America, specifically in places like Colombia, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Cuba, it takes on a very different character than the traditional reactionary Catholicism of places like Poland, Italy. They have liberation theology. Now, why is that? Well, because the local priests and the people were fighting for their liberation and for their freedom. But they also believed in God. And contrary to the traditional reactionary Catholicism of the ruling class of their country and of the mainstream Catholicism at the time, they decided, well, no, we have faith that comes from us, from the people, that's for the people. And that's where you get liberation theology. And that's how you get with any other faith. The Russian Orthodox Church was an institution of Tsarist Russia, the Russian Empire, a key to their control and the very existence of the empire. And right after the revolution, there was state atheism and persecution of religion, and it turned out to be a very devastating thing. And it wasn't until Stalin came back and brought the dignity and respect of faith back to the Soviet Union and promoted it that it took on a different character. Instead of the reactionary Islam of the Gulf states, Libya decided to use Islam for liberation, anti-imperialism, socialism. And that's how the best of them, that's how the best of the comrades in the world do these things. And so, the faith of the toilers, the faith not taken from above, but found within their own souls, the grassroots faith. Orthodox Judaism is a direct response to being assimilated by the cultures that our diaspora lived under and still live under. It is a reaction and a dying, saving breath of the grassroots movement that is Orthodoxy and Hasidim. It's a very folk, while it's combined with great Talmudic tradition, there's also a great folk aspect to it. When a Westerner, specifically a Gentile, takes on an anti-religious position, it is 100% of the time from the perspective of the dominant faith of where they grew up in the imperial core, that being normally Christianity. And in the West, Christianity has a very large hegemony and a rather reactionary one for a lot of it. And many of these irreligious people who become communist and become anti-religious are taking it from this perspective, a Christian perspective. Even though they would argue they're coming from a secular perspective, their entire criticism of faith comes that of Western Christianity that is traditional, reactionary, and had directly affected their lives normally. And then they begin to project these values and these understandings of faith onto people of the global south, like Islam, for example. And then you get this nasty Western chauvinism that makes you sound like a racist whenever you talk about Islam. So why is this important? Why would I care about others' religious beliefs or lack thereof? Well, simply because the majority of the people we're fighting for on this planet are people of faith. And whenever you take such a militant anti-religious stance, you are saying to the majority of the people you claim to fight for that, you know what? You're a reactionary fool. I'm right. You're an idiot. This is chauvinism at its finest. If you have irreligious beliefs and you don't take kindly to religion, that's fine. Keep it to yourself. If you want to point out things about the faith that you grew up in and that you were surrounded by and that has affected you, go right ahead. But don't claim to speak for Jews or Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists. Don't claim to speak for these people, especially from the global south. Don't claim to understand their faiths. I argue that not a single Gentile who hasn't studied in the proper rabbinical tradition will never understand the point of view of Judaism. And so it's chauvinism, it's, hubris, and most importantly, I think it's alienating. You will, alienate the people you claim to fight for. And while history moves forward, your dusty, old, rigid ideas will be left in the dustbin of history. And so we move on. I want to say thank you, everyone. Solidarity and shalom, and have a good one.